Okay, so did you see that thing about that software company? You know, the one that got hit with that ransomware attack? Millions of bucks just to get their own data back. Crazy.
Yeah, it's getting kind of scary. And it's not just the big guys getting targeted anymore either.
Right. And it's like a lot of this stuff could be avoided, if they just had a solid plan. Which brings us to today's deep dive. We're really digging into the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0, or CSF 2.0 if you want to be prince.
ESG, right.
Haha, exactly. But
That-
seriously, it's a pretty dense document. Super valuable, though. Like for any organization, no matter how big or small.
absolutely. I agree.
And that's why we're here. We're breaking it down piece by piece, pulling out those, those aha moments. By the end of this, you'll be schooling your coworkers on all things cybersecurity.
I think you might be right about that. They'll be coming to you for advice.
Oh, me. Little knowledge goes a long way, right? Okay, so picture this. Building a house.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Blueprints, tools, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. So think of the CSF core, like the blueprint, right? It lays it all out with, let me see, 6 main functions. There's govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. It's like a constant thing, always checking the foundation, shoring up the walls, making sure you're ready if a storm hits.
And just like houses, one size doesn't fit all in cybersecurity. You wouldn't like build a log cabin the same way you'd build a skyscraper, right?
Unless you really like termites.
Right. So that's where those CSF profiles come in. You take that blueprint, the core, and tailor it to your specific house, or in this case, your organization. What are your risks? Your budget? What keeps you up at night, security-wise?
It's like, do you need extra protection because you're in Hurricane Alley? Or maybe earthquake country. But in the digital world, of course.
Precisely. You customize based on the threats you're facing. And a big part of that is figuring out how seriously you're taking this whole cybersecurity thing. The CSF has these, they call them CSF tiers.
So are we talking like a basic fence around the property, or are we going full on Fort Knox?
Well, it all depends. A small online store might stick with Tier 1 at first, just the essential stuff to protect customer data. But a huge bank, oh, they're probably at a Tier 3 or even Tier 4. Sophisticated systems, whole teams dedicated to security, the works.
Right, because the stakes are way higher when you're dealing with like millions of financial transactions every single day. But no matter what tier you go with, there's this one function that's like the bedrock of everything else. Governance.
It all starts at the top. Kind of like, when you're building a house, you could have like the strongest walls, the best roof, all that. But if the foundation's weak, forget it. The whole thing's coming down.
And I'm guessing that's why this document had spent so much time on this whole governance thing. But what does that even mean? For cybersecurity, I mean, it sounds kind of, I don't know, boring.
Yeah, I get it. It does sound a little dry, maybe, but trust me, it's not. Think of it this way. Governance, it's like setting the strategy, like the ground rules for cybersecurity, for your whole organization.
Okay, so less about firewalls and more about, like, the game plan.
There you go. And a big part of that, it's understanding your organization's risk appetite. They actually use that phrase. It's figuring out how much risk are you willing to live with.
Risk appetite. So that's like, are you the type who will order takeout from that place with the, the iffy health inspection score?
Yeah.
Or are you more of a 5-star restaurant-only kind of organization?
Perfect analogy. It helps you prioritize. High risk appetite, maybe you just do the bare minimum. Low risk appetite, you go all out on defenses, cyber insurance, the works.
Interesting. So you've figured out your risk appetite. What's next?
Communication. Got to make sure everyone gets it. From the CEO all the way down. Like, what happens if someone gets a phishing email? Who do they tell? What are the steps you take?
Right. Because what's that saying? A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. One weak link in your communication, the whole cybersecurity strategy, it all falls apart.
Exactly. And it's not just about, what to do when something bad happens. It's about building a risk-aware culture.
Risk-aware culture. Sounds kind of intense.
It's not about being paranoid, though. It's about giving people the tools so they can be proactive, creating an environment where they can speak up, if they see a potential risk, without being afraid to say something.
So if you see something, say something, basically.
That's it. But here's where things get really interesting. Because the CSF 2.0, it's not just about preventing attacks. It knows that in this day and age, you're going to get attacked at some point. So it's huge on being ready to respond and recover.
Okay, so it's not just building a strong fortress. You also need an escape tunnel and a plan to rebuild if things go south.
Nailed it. And that's where continuous improvement comes in. It's a big part of the framework.
This idea of customization, ties into another important aspect of the CSF 2.0, continuous improvement. So you don't just set it and forget it. You're always checking, adapting, making things better. Like cybersecurity is a marathon, not a sprint, right?
100%. It's like staying in shape. You don't just work out once and boom, you're fit forever, right?
That's
It's
it.
got to be consistent, changing your routine when you need to, adjusting based on how you're doing.
I like that. Okay, so you got to stay flexible. And speaking of flexibility, one thing that really jumped out at me
Yeah.
in the document was all the stuff about supply chain risk. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just secure your own house right.
Yeah.
You got to make sure your neighbors aren't leaving their doors wide open.
That is such a good point. And you know what? People don't think about it enough. So many organizations, they rely on other companies, vendors, whatever. But if there's a weak link in your supply chain, you're toast. Think of it like you're ordering a pizza.
Okay, I'm with you.
You trust the pizza place, right? But what about the delivery guy, the people who supply the ingredients?
Whoa! Never thought of it like that. A
Yeah.
bad batch of pepperoni could ruin everything.
Exactly. So the CSF 2.0, it's really big on assessing and managing those risks, the ones in your supply chain.
It's like a domino effect. One little vulnerability can take down the whole neighborhood.
Yeah, and that's what I find so fascinating about this whole framework. It gets that cybersecurity, it's not just about tech. It's the people, the processes, the whole culture of your organization.
So we need to change how we think about this whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cybersecurity. It's not just the IT guy's problem. It's everyone's responsibility.
Absolutely. And when everyone's on board, working together, that's when you see real change happen. Speaking of which, have you found any examples of organizations actually using the CSF 2.0? Like in the wild?
Yeah, totally. I was looking into that before we started today, and I found this. It's a case study. It was this manufacturing company, and they were having a real tough time trying to get, their IT security people and the actual factory workers like on the same page.
Oh, yeah, those silos. Classic problem.
Right. So anyway, they decided to try out this CSF 2.0 thing, and get this, it actually worked. They said it helped them create like a common language
Mm-hmm.
for talking about risk.
Yeah.
It's like they finally all had the same cybersecurity dictionary,
It makes such a difference. When everybody's on the same wavelength,
Yeah.
then you can spot those risks, figure out how to deal with them so much easier.
Exactly. And it's not just for those big companies either. There was this other one, this small retail business. And they were really struggling with, well, their cybersecurity budget. I mean, who isn't these days, right?
Yeah, especially for a smaller company. Every penny counts.
Tell me about it. So they couldn't go out and buy all the fancy tools and everything, but they used the CSF 2.0 to kind of like zero in on what mattered most for them, for their specific risks. Instead of, just buying the whole cybersecurity aisle at the store, they walked in with a shopping list.
Smart. Working smarter, not harder. That's what the CSF is all about. You're putting your resources where they count.
And you know what? It worked. They said they were able to reduce their risk, like significantly, and they saved money while they were at it.
No, that's what I like to hear. It proves you don't have to be some tech giant to use this stuff. The CSF 2.0, it's for everybody.
So for our listeners out there, they might be thinking, okay, this is all great, but what about Amy? What's the takeaway here? Why should they care about this whole cybersecurity framework thing?
I'd say it gives you a seat at the table, the cybersecurity table. It gives you that knowledge so you can understand the risk, ask the right questions, push for better practices, whether it's at your job, even in your personal life.
Right. Like that saying, knowledge is power. You don't have to be a tech expert to get the basics. And with the CSF 2.0, it's like having a roadmap, right? So you can start asking those tough questions. Like, hey, are we doing anything about supply chain risks? Or what happens if we get hit with ransomware? What's the plan?
Exactly. You're not just standing on the sidelines anymore. You're part of the solution, building a safer digital world.
Love it. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed by this whole cybersecurity landscape, and let's be real, it can be a lot, just remember the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. It's a great place to start. It's free. It's all right there on the NIST website.
And who knows, it might just save you a whole lot of trouble down the line.
I think you're right about that. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. Hopefully, we've given you a good overview of this super valuable tool and, more importantly, maybe got you thinking about how to be more proactive about your own cybersecurity, because it affects all of us. So until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.